Good afternoon to you. 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Bobby Burack joins us from OutKick. We'll talk about the U.S. women's national team losing. Megan Rapinoe helping lead the way to that humiliating loss. 5 o'clock, Curtis Houck will join us. He is the managing editor over at Newsbusters with the latest on the media lies as they relate to the presidential election and the extremism of the Democrat Party. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As you're in the news and on our weather, we are, of course, keeping an eye on these storms coming into our area. The Washington Post reports that the Beltway area is most at risk tonight between 5 and 7:30 p.m. 5 and 7:30 p.m. for the D.C. area. As they say, it's an uncommon severe thunderstorm threat today with the potential for damaging winds, tornadoes, hail, torrential rain, and frequent lightning during that time. So as things develop, they say 5 o'clock is less than an hour away. As things develop, we will stay on top of them, as always, here on WMAL. Let us get into something I mentioned last week. I wasn't able to flesh out much more, but now that he's back from his vacation, we can talk about it in some detail. The producer for the Vince Coglianese Show is the great Corey Inganamort, and Corey joins me now. Corey, you were just in Puerto Rico for a wedding, correct?
That's correct, Vince. I just got back late last night. I was in Puerto Rico Wednesday. I got in Wednesday of last week, and I got back last night. So feeling rested, relaxed, and ready to go. I have a fun story to tell.
And by the way, you coming back last night, this is weather related. You did say that you ran into some weather issues getting just into the city, just landing at Reagan National?
Yeah, not ideal. We were circling DCA for a little while until the storms passed.
Yes.
I got a little iffy. I've done this before where they actually divert the plane. When it happened to me, we had to land in Pittsburgh so we could regas and come back. So we were killing time. Luckily, the storms passed, but it was only about an hour delay or so.
Yeah, and I know I was mentioning earlier, too, the Beyonce concert that was happening north of you at FedEx Field also got delayed last night. A couple big concerts here as the weather's hitting hard. There's also, of course, that Pink concert taking place today at Nationals Park. We'll see what happens with it. I did see that the Nationals posted a bit ago that they'll post any weather updates to their Twitter account, or for those people who are in stadium, they'll be able to see it in stadium. So weather, of course, a concern tonight. But you mentioned you have a good story coming out of Puerto Rico. You texted me last week, and you said something to the effect of, guess who I'm standing here with? Tell me, what happened?
Well, I got to the hotel, the Caribe Hilton, on Wednesday afternoon, and we're walking around, and I see that there's a teachers convention going on. There were signs for it. One of the conference rooms were being used. I didn't think much of it until the next morning. I get to the breakfast where I was had continental breakfast complimentary. By the way, so I get to the breakfast room and I realized all that they have, by the way, was like Fruit Loops and some stale toast. So I decided to pay the $35 upgrade. So sitting next to me was there was all this great breakfast, omelets, lox, all this. So I upgrade. I fill up my plate. I'm feeling really good about everything. Sit at my table with my two friends, and I look to my right, and there is the supervillain herself, Randi Weingarten. She's sitting about 10 feet away from me.
Yeah, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten, one of the most powerful teachers union officials in the entire country, has the ear of the President of the United States and every other powerful Democrat, and she is sharing the same breakfast facility as Corey Inganamort. Was this a fancy place? I've been meaning to ask you, how fancy was this hotel?
It was pretty fancy. It was pretty fancy. Yeah, I'm sure Randi Weingarten, I looked it up. She makes $560,000 a year, Vince. I don't think she's slumming it.
And that's just her salary. That's not even like the extra perks that she gets, the travel paid for, the hotel rooms at places in the Puerto Rican island. Yeah, they're all
I'm sure
covered.
She has speaker fees, all this kind of stuff. So she's sitting down about 10 feet away from me, schmoozing it up with looks like 8 or so teachers. They're having a grand old time. And that's where I sneak a picture and I send it to you, Vince. I'm like, I'm biting my tongue right now. I want to say something. Randi Weingarten sitting right next to me. And I was planning on biting my tongue. I did for at least 10, 15 minutes. And then She gets up, starts walking around the room, schmoozing with everybody, and everybody's so happy to see her. And that's when my blood started to boil. She's talking to all these teachers. The teachers are introducing her to their children. And I overheard some story how this one kid wanted to be an immigration lawyer, and she was giving him an inspirational speech and how you can do it. And like, I'm listening to this and I'm like, okay, just biting my tongue. But then I was like, you know what? I need some more lox and cream cheese. So I went up to the front of the buffet, and I timed this out. I just kind of stood there until I saw she was exiting the room, because I had to say something. So I said,
right. You saw your moment slipping away.
Yeah.
She was walking away, and you said, and all of the dithering you were doing finally led to this desperate moment. You're like, I've got to say something.
Got to say something. So I see she's walking out, and I time it so I'm walking next to her, and I just, not so much in her face, but side to her, I pointed at her. I said, "Shame on you for closing down our schools and setting our children back a generation." I said it just like that, enthusiastically, but I didn't yell it. I didn't shout her down in front of everybody in the room, but I just had to say something. And I expected her to keep walking and maybe ignore me, but she turned right around, her and her posse of about 3 people. And she's like, "What do you mean I closed down schools?" And I was like, "Oh, well, here we go." So I said, "Are you telling me you didn't close down schools?" I said, "You testified among Congress." I said, "You said that you were texting with Rochelle Walensky." I said, "Why are you texting Rochelle Walensky? You're coming up with policies to keep schools closed."
Yeah, Rochelle Walensky is not even with the education department. CDC director Rochelle Walensky.
Yeah.
So why is the head of this teachers union texting with Rochelle Walensky? What'd she say?
That's exactly what I asked her. I said, "Why are you texting with Rochelle Walensky?" I said, "Why do you have her number?" And she snapped back at me. She says, "Everybody has Rochelle Walensky's number." I said, "I don't have Rochelle Walensky's number." And she rolled her eyes, and she said something. I said, "You kept schools closed for so long. My nieces really suffered from that. They had to stay at home. They tried to learn remotely. That didn't go well for them." She's like, "Well, what state did your nieces go to school in?" I said, "New Jersey." She's like, "Oh, well, I worked very hard with that governor in New Jersey to keep schools open." Which is absolute BS. Phil Murphy, Mr. The Bill of Rights is out of my pay grade, is one of the worst governors in America. And for some reason, he kind of keeps a lower profile than the Gretchen Whitmers or the Cuomos or Gavin Newsoms. But Phil Murphy is a terrible governor. And I know from experience that my nieces were out of school for a very long time. And
at the urging of people like Randi Weingarten.
Exactly.
Who wanted to keep the schools shut down. And New Jersey, kind of much more famously, is very beholden to the teachers' unions there. So if the teachers' unions are calling the shots, they don't care if they're going to destroy the kids. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. And she insisted that she was working to keep the schools open. I said, "No, you weren't." And then that's kind of where we hit a dead end. She's like, "Well, you're not listening. We're not getting anywhere." I said, "Exactly. I just had to tell you that we're all ashamed of you." And then she walked away. And that, I felt the adrenaline rushing a little bit. I sat back down with my friends, and we enjoyed the rest of the day. And I thank God that I did not run into Randi Weingarten at the hot tub later that day. I was keeping an eye out for a number of reasons, but that vacation was going so well until that point.
That would have put a real damper on the whole vacation. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Randi Weingarten. Here is Corey's memory is great, and so is his audio clipping ability. Here's a flashback to the time Randi Weingarten claimed she had the direct line to Rochelle Walensky.
Do not talk to representatives of the government.
Do you have a direct number to Director Walensky?
Do I have Director Walensky's direct number?
Yes.
Yes, I have Director Walensky's direct number.
Well, hopefully she'll give it to me too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. That's Congresswoman Debbie Lesko saying, "I don't even have access to this phone number." So now we have, the list is growing. So I know of 3 people who do not have Rochelle Walensky's number. That would be Corey Inganamort, Debbie Lesko, and Vince Coglianese. We don't have this number that Randi Weingarten claims everybody has. Don't you think she would? You know what this tells me, actually, that she said that to you, Corey, that she said everybody has Rochelle Walensky's number, is that you're one of the only people who's ever confronted her about this, or else she wouldn't have set her own trap. She said, everybody has the number, and you said, "I don't," and she looked at you dumbfounded. She had no idea how to respond.
That's such a good point. If she was ever confronted, she should have a better answer for that. Right? I didn't think of it in that way, but yeah, she should have a better answer for that because clearly everybody does not. No, only the highly wealthy, connected, powerful elites in charge of teachers' unions determining school policies have her number, apparently.
Only people who have the resources to stay in luxury hotel accommodations in the Puerto Rican island. The Caribe Hilton is one of the only places that you might run into her, and sure enough, you did. Thank goodness, and confronted Randi Weingarten. I love that story so much. I'm so glad you did. On behalf of the rest of the country, thank you for doing that.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Vince.
Hey, by the way, there's I should point out, just by way of helping people understand why we're talking about this, that you are a longtime member of the Washington Nationals organization. You were. As the former mascot for the team for 13 years, including the time in which they won the World Series. So therefore, you have a World Series ring, yada, yada, yada. Corey's very famous for that. But today, you had the White House welcome a Major League Baseball team to congratulate them on a World Series win, the Houston Astros.
Yeah, that was today. And the Astros, other than winning last year's World Series, is most famous for cheating. They in 2017 were caught cheating. They were filming pitches from the outfield and relaying that to the dugout, and then the dugout was knocking on a garbage can.
They were banging on trash can lids. I remember this.
Yeah, so to let the batter know what kind of pitch was coming. So I thought it was kind of ironic. The cheating Houston Astros they won by cheating basically met the president who won by cheating. So I thought that was a bit ironic today. And I just wanted to remind everybody how much better the Washington Nationals visit to the White House was in 2019 when Donald Trump was president. It was just a party. It was an absolute party. And remember, Ryan Zimmerman thanked Donald Trump for keeping the world safe, and Nationals fans wanted to just like cancel him completely. Mr. National, he'll have his number retired for the Nats soon, and it's just amazing. Such simple words in Washington D.C. can try to get a player canceled.
Drives people crazy. So you were there at the White House for that?
I was, yeah. It was cool. I walked in with the players, and we had our own little green room in the East room, kind of right off the entrance of the East room. And the racing presidents, which I oversaw at the time, were performing in the White House lawn. So I just helped them get dressed. I got to mostly just hang out and watch all of it. Didn't have to get in costume as Screech. Screech wasn't there or invited. In hindsight, I'm not sure why, but I actually enjoyed it better out of costume. I didn't have to sweat my butt off, and I got to experience it all. It was just a really fun time.
Was that cool? Do the players like doing this thing, or is it just going through the motions for them?
No, I think they did. You can tell because at the time, Donald Trump, well, it was always super controversial, especially in the sports world.
I remember.
You remember I guess it was the Golden State Warriors, a couple football teams. I don't remember exactly. They boycotted their visit to the White House.
So stupid.
To protest Donald Trump because of all the evils that he performed, such as a great economy, secure border, low crime. Like, all that stuff is super offensive to these professional athletes.
Right.
So when the Nats went, it was actually. It was awesome because they kind of bucked the trend of avoiding Donald Trump's invite. So it was actually I remember there being a few players to boycott. Sean Doolittle comes to mind. He's a woke. I personally can't stand his policies. Very outwardly
crazy.
Yeah, crazy, pro transgender movement, child mutilation, all that kind of stuff. So, like, he was one guy, for example, who decided to boycott Donald Trump. So were a few others, but in general, it was a party. Like, they all enjoyed it. Donald Trump, unlike other presidents, got each of the players to talk on the microphone, say a few words, and it would almost felt like a rally. Really, it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. That's really cool. What a neat experience. One of many that you've had. All right. Well, thank you, Corey, for all of it, for telling us about your time at the White House and confronting Randi Weingarten on behalf of grateful parents everywhere. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Vince.
The great Corey Inganamort of the Vince Coglianese Show. Thankfully, 421 now. Yeah, we've got more news than we know what to do with today. We're going to try to get to everything. Let me get a phone call in here, though. We owe the phones some attention. Sam in Alexandria, line 1. Sam, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show, sir. Well, good afternoon to you. 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, Curtis Houck will join us from Newsbusters at 5 o'clock as we get into the latest media lies about Republicans running for president and also about the extremism of the Democrat Party. They like to downplay that. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As you know, we are keeping our eyes on the weather in our area. People are already trying to get home to beat the storm. The expectation is somewhere between 5 and 7:30 p.m. is where we'll see the most risk for this storm hitting our area, and that is into Washington, D.C. specifically. So that is coming up. They say some power outages are likely today and that you should be probably charging devices and batteries now just in case you have to encounter something like that. Also, the Washington Post reports there's a 10 to 14% chance of tornadoes within 25 miles of any location, which is unusually high for this area. Any tornadoes that develop will probably do so very quickly with little warning. An isolated strong tornado is possible. So a lot of things to keep your head on a swivel for this afternoon. Say a prayer that everything goes just fine. We get a bunch of rain, but we'll see what happens in the meantime. But now let me move into what happened over the weekend. The women's national soccer team just was eliminated in the round of 16 playing against Sweden. They had a penalty shootout, and among the people who missed their kicks was Megan Rapinoe. Megan Rapinoe, the woman who does not have a soft spot in her heart for the United States of America, despite the fact that she wears the red, white, and blue in competition very frequently and then complains about it. For more on all of this, I want to bring in Bobby Burack. He's a columnist at OutKick and joins us on the phone. Bobby, good afternoon to you.
Vince, I appreciate it.
What happened?
So I went into this tournament a little bit confused. So full disclosure, I don't like soccer. I don't really like women's sports. So I'm not a fan of women's soccer. But there was this debate online and even at OutKick, should we root for or against the U.S. women's soccer team?
Right.
I didn't really have an opinion, but I was fascinated by the discussion because on one hand, they represent us, the USA, and I'm pretty patriotic myself. At least I try to be and think I am. But then you have these women on the soccer team, like Megan Rapinoe, who really abhor everything about the United States. This is the woman who ex-teammates say bullied them and shamed them into kneeling for the national anthem. So Megan Rapinoe has always been a vile character, doesn't like the United States, treats her teammates poorly. I mean, she's very unlikable. And she's become the face of U.S. women's soccer team. So I don't begrudge anybody for rooting against the team, particularly this whole push towards equal pay. Even though we don't make nearly as much money for our team, we want to be paid like the men who make triple us and all that stuff. So I totally get why people rooted against the team. So I was traveling over the past 2 days, and I saw on my phone yesterday afternoon, Team USA lost, which was a huge shock. They were like a minus 5,000 favorite to win this game and win the tournament. And what was so interesting about it is they lost in large part because Megan Rapinoe missed her penalty kick, and that just got everybody going. I saw some people from ESPN, CBS say, oh, of course the sexist, bigoted conservatives are now rooting against the USA because Megan Rapinoe missed the goal. But I think that's not accurate. I don't think conservatives or really anybody in the country was necessarily rooting against the red, white, and blue. They were rooting against players like Megan Rapinoe.
100%. There's no question to me. Nobody's rooting against the flag or the country. They're rooting against the people who are constantly crap talking it. So that's Megan Rapinoe. And by the way, it's not the whole team. My impression is that you get a bunch of these women who have worked their whole lives towards this goal. They're going to play soccer. They're not there to make political statements. They're not all Megan Rapinoe. So there is some schadenfreude in watching Megan Rapinoe blow it, and not even close. The kick sailed clean over the goal like she had never played soccer in her life. I think people enjoyed that because they were tired of being crapped on by her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never really declared either way. But I think if you were to ask me, honestly, I would have said, I want Team USA to win the cup.
Right. But
I also wouldn't mind seeing Megan Rapinoe fail in front of the entire world just for giggles and kind of what all she said. So there was a lot of people celebrating, but it was more because it was Rapinoe, not that Team USA lost.
Megan Rapinoe was asked what. Well, actually, let me play two pieces of audio. This is Megan Rapinoe taking the kick, and the announcer, helping us relive that humiliating moment for her.
Rapinoe right foots it over the bar.
And Rapinoe, after she missed, she had a big smile on her face for some reason. That's kind of weird. I wouldn't be smiling if I had done that. Rapinoe was asked after the game what her favorite memory of U.S. soccer was, and here's what she said.
Is there a memory that stands out to you right now in this moment?
I mean, probably equal pay chance after the final.
Oh, my God.
And I think, they were saying equal pay, but could have been saying a lot of things. I think this team has always fought for so much more, and that's been the most rewarding part for me, of course.
Oh, what an insufferable loser she is. Equal pay was her favorite part of playing the highest levels of soccer competition?
Yeah, that's the thing about her is that she represents really the worst of what America is. You look at her, she's this spoiled, entitled brat who tells everybody that she's a victim, that because she's a woman that she's not making as much money as her male counterparts. Again, I've written about this. The reason she doesn't make as much as the men is because the women's team doesn't generate as much money as the men.
Right.
I believe Don Lemon, before he was booted off CNN, actually made that point. I know everybody jumped on him and said he's sexist. Well, maybe Don Lemon is, but that the women don't deserve to make more money because they don't generate as much money.
Well, that's right. That's right. What's happening here is she's selling a product that nobody's buying. That's the issue.
Right. That's
go ahead.
Go ahead. That's like a male Instagram model saying it's sexist that I don't make as much money as the female Instagram model.
Right.
The reason is because the male doesn't drive as much engagement. It's not sexist. It's reality. It's business.
Yes.
Something else that bugs me about her, and this didn't get a lot of attention, but she did an interview leading into this tournament, calling out Dave Chappelle, the comedian, and Sage Steele, the ESPN broadcaster. She put out there that these two individuals are endangering and threatening transgender people by saying that men and women are different. So, first of all, the hysteria that she's produced for the United States is one thing. But to put these labels on the backs of these people saying that they're dangerous, that they're threats to humanity, it's just such a lie. And nobody in the media holds her accountable. She's done so many interviews since then, and nobody's asked her to provide any evidence that Dave Chappelle and Sage Steele are putting the lives of transgender people in danger. She's been coddled her entire career, yet she stands up there and acts like she hasn't been.
But one of the key takeaways from that particular opinion is that she's undermining women's sports. She is gutting the very institution that let her perform at a level where television cameras captured it and shared it with us. So she is now she's retiring. This is the end of her career, fittingly, as she misses that final goal and eliminates her team from competition. But at the same time, she's pulling up the ladder behind her. She is making it harder for women to compete at the level that she competed at by endorsing the idea that men can take their places.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this odd group of athletes and media members who say they're advocates for women's sports and that they love the WNBA, but at the same time they're advocating for Leah Thomas, who was born Will as a male, and they go after Riley Gaines and undermine her. It doesn't really make sense. Either you want women to have equal opportunity or you don't. And there seems to be this odd dichotomy between the group that says all this. And look, the obvious answer is these people don't mean what they're saying. They're pandering. They're trying to grow their own status. None of them actually care. I mean, at least in Rapinoe's case, she's trying to enrich herself by discussing equal pay. But you can't take anything that these athletes are.
You're exactly right. There's no underlying There's no underlying virtue. It's a vice, actually. It's narcissism. Megan Rapinoe likes being on the cover of magazines. She likes being invited to awards shows. She likes being the face of victimhood because it's been profitable for her personally. It's satisfied her, or at least it's helped her unquenchable ego. She is a narcissist, and it's on display. And I saw there's a video that's been going around of her at an award show a couple years back. She was wearing one of the, sometimes these female celebrities, they won't wear a shirt underneath a blazer. They'll wear a blazer, and the blazers, it's just a blazer, and she's obviously naked underneath it. And she's sitting at an award show, and a young man, a little boy, comes up to her with a soccer ball and hands her a marker and a soccer ball, a Sharpie and a soccer ball for her to sign. She signs it without looking at him. She looks away from him as if she's more interested in what's going on around her, signs it, hands it back to him. The most disinterested posture ever. And it tells you everything, Bobby Burack. She is so completely full of herself that she doesn't actually have an idea, like a moral compass of any meaning. It's really about her.
No, she's a sociopath. I wouldn't even say hypocrite. I would say sociopath. These examples have followed her ever since she's been in the news. I saw some people say, well, it's great that she's going to be off Team USA. The problem is now she's going to have more time to spew this nonsense and hate. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up on ESPN or CNN. She'll be around. Her voice will probably be bigger because, at least according to the sports world and corporate media, they hold her up as a hero. They print every word that she utters like it's the gossip. So she's not going anywhere. She might not be playing on Team USA, but her voice, the headline she creates, has only begun.
One other thing about Team USA, the women's team, I was a little confused by the scandal involving the national anthem this year. Nobody was kneeling or anything, but there was some scandal made of the fact that some of the players didn't sing along to the anthem. My impression has always been I don't typically sing along to the national anthem unless the mood strikes and everybody around me is singing. I'll join in for something like that. But by and large, I keep my mouth shut and let whoever's singing sing. But apparently, was this an act of protest on the part of some of these players to not sing the national anthem?
So I didn't understand that either. I've gone to a bunch of sporting events. I've just asked on the past few weekends. I don't sing during the national anthem. I don't think that's a protest. I stand up and all that, gestures. But I don't know if that was a protest, honestly, because if it is, I've been protesting for my entire life. I didn't know about it. I don't know that that's a protest. I wouldn't put it past them because of what they've done. But I do think this is USA. If they wanted to protest, they would have knelt down. So I don't believe it was. I think they wouldn't have hit it. They would have just done what they did before.
Well, it's also silly. They should be. If it was, that's preposterous. Just be proud of the team that you're representing, and represent America well. And this is also just as a final thought, Bobby. This is really the product of the leftist education system, the leftist cultural revolution we're undergoing. The hate America attitude is so pervasive and fashionable that you're seeing people, young people especially, adopt it. Thinking that that's the proper posture to have. And it's so unfortunate because we have a great country with a great legacy. They should be proud of it, and they should want to build on it.
That's so well said. It is so true, too. Growing up, disrespecting the American flag or the country was frowned upon. I would never think of doing it, particularly in a public setting. Doing so was just not acceptable. And it really shouldn't necessarily be on the scale it is now. I'm all for criticizing the country and our leadership, but to be ashamed of the red, white, and blue, the flag, and what it means, that's gone, a whole different level. I interviewed Pete Hegseth from Fox and Friends a couple years ago, and he had this line that really stuck with me. He goes, if you compare America to heaven, it's going to fail every time. But if you compare America to any other nation in the country, it's going to win every time. I believe that that's the most astute way to look at the nation right now.
Ask any immigrant. You're totally right. Thank you very much, as always, Bobby Burack over at OutKick. Appreciate your insights and your excellent work. Thank you, Bobby.
Washington's best way to wake up. O'Connor and Company with Larry O'Connor. Weekday mornings from 5 to 9 on WMAL.
Let's go to the phones. John calling in from Spotsylvania now, line 3. John, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how you doing today?
Good, sir. What's on your mind?
All right, well, so Megan Rapinoe missed a goal. She said she wants trans players to play. Well, if that trans player would have made that goal, then that trans player would have been being paid more money because really it was a guy pretending to be a woman.
Sure. Yeah.
Complain about that.
Yeah, that's right. So they won't. It still won't be equal pay. That's a good point. It'll actually be men. If they were getting paid more money and there were men scoring all the goals, it would just be men who were getting all that cash.
Exactly, and what I heard was this too: that male soccer players, they receive 77% of the profits that they in the soccer league, while the women receive 13% of their profits from their league. So really, they are getting paid more than the men are.
In other words, they're being overpaid, compared to the men. Yeah, no question. And this comes down to revenues, John. You know, Bill Burr, the comedian, has a great set on this topic. He said, look, it was feminists who argued for all of these separate professional sports for women. But how come the feminists aren't filling the stadiums then? They were arguing, we need this, we need the WNBA, but they didn't buy a ticket. Then they hold you accountable, John. They say it's men who are failing female athletes.
I'm going to go watch a woman play a sport that I feel that they're not as good at as a male player is.
I know. It's so silly. Everyone knows it, except for self-interested people like Megan Rapinoe. And even she, actually, at her core, she knows it too. John, thank you very much. Let's see. Teresa calling in from Olney now, line 4. Teresa, go ahead. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Thank you. I asked Corey, I was so waiting for him to say that him and Randi Weingarten got into a food fight. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, they were this close. If he had confronted her in the buffet line specifically, that would have been the thing.
That would have been great.
All right. Hey, Teresa, thank you. Sorry, I know you wanted to mention something else about women's soccer, but we are just up against it. I hate to tell you. I do have updates for everyone on what's going on with the storm. We're getting a number of weather alerts in right now. Stay with WMAL News and weather. We'll offer you updates on that subject coming up. Also, Curtis Houck will be with us from Newsbusters just minutes away as the media once again advances lies to make it seem like Democrats aren't extreme. Curtis, with the truth, that's ahead.